Welcome everyone to another episode of Fire, Flower, and Fur. Over the last little while, of course, we've been dealing with the COVID and all that, so we haven't done a lot of posting. I'm going to change that now. I promised over a couple of videos that I was going to do it. What I do is a chicken prep. If you've been paying attention to any of our other videos or watching any other videos, I do competition barbecue once in a while, not as often as I'd like, and COVID's kind of put a damper on doing that over the last year or so. I have done several KCBS contests, and out of that I've taken first place twice and third place once, and then also placed in the top 10 on 2 other occasions. So this is a good way to do chicken. I wouldn't say it's probably the absolute best, but this is the way I do it, and if you can glean something from it that'll help, I hope you will. I'm doing chicken thighs. It's been kind of hard to find quality chicken the last little while for obvious reasons. We haven't really it's been hard to get just about everything. So these I actually found. These are Foster Farms. I specifically prefer either Foster Farms or Tyson. They seem to be better quality. They seem to be more consistent in size. This particular batch that I got isn't real consistent in size, but the quality's good, it looks like, and I got to kind of hurry through this because this is going to kind of start to warm up. And with one thing with chicken is you do not, if you can help it, want to allow it to get warm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through like 3 different phases of the prep for something you can do just for the backyard, just to kind of keep things clean and nice. And excuse me just a moment, I need to grab some gloves. And then we'll walk through a couple of other ways you can do things, and then I'll get down to what I actually do as the finished part of the prep when I do competitions, trying to get things consistent in size, things like that. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. It kind of depends on what you got. So I got 8 out of that package, and as you can see, they look like they're varying sizes. They're not really consistent in size right now, but it is what it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple of these, and I'll start with kind of what I do on just a normal basis. And this is what I do with every thigh that I actually prep. We'll actually grab, we'll start with that one right there. First thing I do is if you get to this end, you see this big knuckle looking thing right here. So you got this big end right here. There's 2 things that I do with every piece of chicken that I do no matter what. First thing I'll do is there's this little vein of fat right here. If you take your knife and just real lightly slice into that and get down there a ways, what you'll usually find, is sometimes not always, maybe not on this one, you'll find a little vein in there. And I like to pull that vein out because 99% of the time there is blood in it, which is not very appetizing when you go to bite into a piece of chicken and see a big blood spot. Okay, so that was a good example. I still have to cut the bone away. I don't ever pull the bone out. You can if you want. If you want boneless thighs, and you know what? There's that vein right there. It's down lower than I expected it to be. So there it is right there. And if you can see it, see it's got a big blood pocket in it. And that's everything we're going to do. So take your knife, lift it out a little bit. On the wrong end, sorry about that, and then just give it a nice little tug. And this is really kind of gross when you think about it. My wife just sits and gags. So pull that vein out. So what you've done is you've eliminated that big blood spot happening. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing is I trim away on this bone right here just a little bit. Try to get down just into the meat a little bit. And then you can use bone scissors if you want. I prefer these little nippers. Just go down to your local hardware store. These are brand new. I will say that if you go get these, clean them really good, because during the manufacturing process you're going to have machine oil stuff in them you don't want down there. Clean it really good. Put a little drop of olive oil or some vegetable oil down in the thing right here just to keep them so they're good. So these were brand new. The other ones I had were kind of gucky, so I went ahead and bought some new ones the other day. Anyway, just get into that bone right there. And if you can get just under it a little bit, and then you want to nip that end off. Now the thing about this is you want to make it as square as you can. Try not to put an angle on it. Just a quick nip, and the bone comes right out. And just clean up around it. That meat up around it there, pull it out. Sometimes you might also find there's a big tendon right there, but we'll take care of that later. Anyway, so there's that bone. Try to keep it clean. You know, problem with this is if you do this, sometimes you will get little chunks of bone on it. But we're going to wash these again, and that's one of the things we'll do. Okay, so that's the first part of prep on that. It's not pretty. At this point, we can cut that little piece of skin off if we want. Just to kind of clean it up a little bit. I'm actually going to leave that because I'll get there. But you could cut that off, and then you can roll it up, or you can spice it up, or you can put your rub on it, or you can put, you know, salt and pepper, whatever, and then just go ahead and either smoke it or grill it that way. So, nice, decent little pieces of chicken there. Okay. Another thing you could do at this point is one end of this thigh, the skin's pretty much always going to be loose, and if you want, just get a hold of it and just peel it back a little bit. So what you're going to get is to a point to where it's stuck pretty good on the piece of chicken. You got a lot of fat here, you got some stuff on here, so from here there's a couple of things you can do. So if you look at that, it's kind of square. One thing I like to do is I like to take this hunk of fat off this side right here, no matter what, because the fat's just going to render out anyway, and unlike beef and pork, you don't really get fat in the meat, it's all exterior. There's some, but the fat that's on this really isn't that good. So, once again, if you want to square things up, just kind of take these little pieces off. Okay? Some of this other little fat, you could kind of get rid of that too if you wanted. This knife, I thought I'd sharpened it the other day, and it's not very sharp. Okay? So once again, you got a decent piece of chicken. When you do that, once again, you can spice it, you know, either side, do whatever. And then just fold the skin back over and just plump it up. So these pieces hanging out here, we probably want to cut that off. Okay, so that's another step to the process to where when you're doing this, you know, you can kind of clean it up and do it that way. And then what you end up with is just a nice, decent piece of chicken there. Grill it, cook it, whatever. Okay. Okay, so that's two things you can do. Just to grill or smoke chicken if you want without getting into a lot of other things, okay? But when I do competitions, I actually peel the fat off the skin. So what I'll do in this case is I'll go ahead and take the skin clear off, just peel it right off. Then what I'll do, I like to kind of do this with the smallest piece I have to start with, because I kind of want to get an idea of what I'm working with. The problem is you see like this piece here, in your hand it looks huge. See how big it looks? But when you get to the skin part, that's all skin from there to there. A lot of fat and everything. So when you actually look at the size, they're pretty consistent. They're about the same size. I'm going to trim this up a little bit more. I'll get to that in just a second. So this looks like it's about the smallest piece I've got. There's another one that's kind of small there, but it stretches out a little bit. So we'll go with this one. All right, so we've peeled the skin off. You can see the skin's gone. And then what you've got here is you've got this other side here that's got another big piece of fat on it. So I'll run my knife down to just where that catches, and I'll lop that right off. Okay? There's another piece of fat right there that I want to get rid of, just because I want to clean it up. So take all the fat off. Now, what you've got, so here's the end that we took the thing off. What you see there, there's a ligament right there. You can get rid of that if you want. I'm going to, because that's going to be nothing but a tooth breaker. All right, so it's kind of square. So what I personally do, and there's a lot of different ways you can do this, what I personally do is I'll put my hand, and some of you are going to have bigger hands than me because I've got kind of small hands. I'll just get a feel for what size I'm looking at there. How does that feel in the palm of my hand, okay? There's a little bit of a ridge here. So if I put that in the palm of my hand, I line this side up. This is the one I cut that piece of fat off of, this side right here. So I cut that piece of fat off that, some of the meat. I'll line my hand up there, put my thumb down, and that gives me a pretty good idea of a consistent size that I'm looking at. So what I can do is I can see, well, if I take that little thing off right there, okay? Now, that looks like I've taken quite a bit off, and I have. But what I've got is I've got a consistent piece of chicken. So there's this little piece right here. I just want to square that up. Just take those ends off. Okay. I still got some fat right there, but I'm going to leave it. So there I've got a decent piece of chicken. So when I go to put the skin on, I'll trim this skin down a little bit. And you do not need to match the skin up. You're going to end up trimming these down to where the skin will work on all of them. So you just put the skin on there, stretch it over both ends, tuck it up underneath, and there you go. So nice chicken thigh right there. Okay, both ends. This one's covered. This one, the skin could come down a little bit more, but I'm kind of hurrying. But anyway, so there's another way to get to that point. Okay, but like I said, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to end up scraping the fat off the chicken, off the skin. Sorry. I brine this, and in a minute I'll show you how I brine it, and I'll also show you how I scrape the fat. But the thing is, when you do the skin, you definitely want them as cold as you can get them. I mean, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to wrap these in paper towels and throw them in the freezer for about 15 minutes. The fat comes off a lot easier if you do that. It's just, I don't know, like I say, you don't need to do all this, but if you end up with consistent pieces, and I'll show you also later on when we put them in a pan to cook them, the different things you can use, and I'll kind of get into an explanation of that. So that's what we want to do, all right? So that's what we've done. I've trimmed it down. So just to recap, first thing I did is I cut that little knuckle off. I took the vein out. There's one here I've got. You can see the veins actually showing up on the surface. If you can see that, it's right there. So I need to pull the veins out. I'm going to pull all the skin off. They're not real pretty. I mean, you know, you're gonna end up kind of finishing them off with the skin. The skin's what's going to be the finish on that. And when they cook, they're going to relax a little bit. There's some of them that are going to be higher than others, and if you need, you can peel that off, that stuff off the top. Okay. So that's part of the first thing of the chicken prep. Take that always, if you can do it, take that off. Oh, one more thing I want to mention. If you look real close at that bone right there, it's kind of a reddish color, but it's not bad. Some of the lesser, I don't want to say it that way, lesser quality thighs that I've done, that will actually be a kind of a darker reddish brown. What will happen is if you notice that on one of them, as it cooks, the stuff that's in the marrow and the stuff that's in the bone, the liquid that's in the bone, is going to push out from the heat. If that's a dark color, the liquid's going to be a dark color, and I know this sounds really kind of bad, but what it'll look like is sometimes it'll look like it has a big scab on the end. I found that out the hard way at a competition. The chicken looked great. It tasted great. It really should have placed higher, and it didn't. When I got the comment card back, somebody actually mentioned the fact that this dark spot was not very appetizing. Lesson learned. Okay. All right. So that's that part of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and finish skinning this. I'll skin this. I'll come back. I'll show a prep on a couple more of them, just so you can kind of see how the consistency works out, and then we'll go from there. So stand by. Okay, I have gotten the skin off all the chicken. It didn't take very long. I just wanted to show you real quick. So I put it on a paper towel, and you can see it looks kind of disgusting. Make sure you remember which is the fat side and which is the skin side on this. It will come into play a lot later on. So the idea is just peel the skin off. There's nothing fancy to it. And then I put it on a paper towel just to absorb some of the moisture. All I'm going to do is just curl it up, leave it flat, and then I'm just going to put it in my freezer for just like 10 minutes or so. Because all I want to do is make sure it's as cold as it can be. Now, if you can still scrape the fat. You can still scrape the fat if it's warm. It's just the fat starts to soften up and it gets real gummy, and it's a real bear. When it's cold, it's a little stiffer, and when you get a knife to it and start scraping it, or a blade or some sort, it comes off in bigger pieces, and it gets real slimy on your gloves and everything, and it's just not real conducive to what we're doing. Okay, so here's the piece that we cleaned up. Okay, I'm going to grab another piece and go through this again just real quick. So here's the big knuckle right here. And the first thing I want to do is just take that meat down a little bit alongside that bone, get to where I can get to a point on that with my nippers so I can see the bone right there. So there's the bone. I'll take my nippers, take the sharp end, get down underneath that, and then just a quick nip, make sure it's as square as can be. There you go. That one just popped right out. Now, this one still has that little ligament right there. We'll take care of that in a minute. This is the one I showed you earlier, that the vein's actually right there, so I'm not even going to have to dig for it. So I just want to get my knife under a little bit. Okay, get a hold of it. Try not to push the blood out. See, I broke that one, but blood is still in this end of it. So just get a hold of that. Try not to push the blood out of it. Give it a nice little tug, and you'll see it's pulling the meat up from down in here. So it's actually coming out from there. There you go. And there's the other vein. Once again, I know that's quite disgusting, but my wife will never, she's never here when I do this. So, all right, once again, for competition cleanup, the first thing I'll do is I'll take part of this little end off right here. I'll come down to where that fat starts, cut that square. I'll clean up this. So this is where that ligament is right there. You can see it right there. So I want to take that off. Feel the end of that bone. Okay, make sure I'm not gonna, so it's right there. Okay, so there's that ligament right there. You can see it. All right, and so from there on out, this one turned out pretty good. There's still this little gob of fat right here, so I'm just going to take my knife and just kind of scrape that off as best I can. This chicken was bruised. You can see that. I got bruised right there, so that'll be interesting to see how that cooks up. And then I got this big knob on this end and this little point. So once again, I'll take my hand, I'll lay it down, pretty much on this edge right here where I took that piece off. Got this little strip right here. So if I take just a little bit of that off, clean up that end. It'll make it a lot easier when we put the skin on too. If the ends are square, then you're not fighting the points that are, you know, sticking out from here and there. This has got just a little bit of these little points right here, so I'm just going to take that little bit off right there. A little bit off right there. Okay, so now when we look at those, we lay those out. See, those are fairly consistent. This one's a little higher on this side, and if I really wanted to, but I've got some bigger pieces here, I would, you know, take the top of that off, just that little ridge off right there, just to make it more consistent. But when you fold them up now, see, they look pretty close. This one's not quite as plump as this one when you do that. Like I say, if I wanted to, I'd take this little piece off, just a little bit of the meat off right there. And there you go. So you've got two fairly consistent pieces of chicken right there. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of these up. Once again, if you have any questions about this, please feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to, you know, give you ideas of what's going on. And I also like ideas. So if you have anything you'd like to add, you know, by all means, please do. Anyway, I'll be right back. I'll finish trimming these up. I'll show you what all 8 of them look like after they're trimmed and set. I gotta hurry and get them in the fridge though, because it's starting to get warm. This house is really warm. It snowed about 4 inches last night, and so the house got really hot from the furnace running. But anyway, I'll come right back and show you when this is done, and then we'll start scraping the fat on the skin. So stand by. So I finished trimming all these up, getting them ready. There was a few smaller pieces in there I do want to show, and I'm not going to like this. This is everything I ended up pulling off the pieces, as far as all the fat, the bone, the veins, everything. You know, there's a lot there. I'm doing a competition prep on these, and you know, when you do anything like a quesadillas contest or anything like that, the judges, it's just, you know, it is what it is. You try to get them as good as you can. I'll explain a little bit more about some of the stuff that I found out at a couple of the contests about the way the pan I actually cooked them in makes a difference. It's all subjective. just like anything else, the judges are going to like what they like. I just got lucky 3 times kind of in a row. And one thing I also want to say is I'm really not a big fan of chicken. I don't eat chicken on any sort of regular basis. In fact, the first time I took first place, I didn't even taste them. I just figured I wasn't really, big on chicken or whatever. My daughter is one of there's 4 members of our team. There's me, my 2 daughters, my wife. My son shows up once in a while. So depending on, who's there, I tell people, I think I said this before, I tell people we go to a barbecue contest and a family vacation breaks out because they're a ton of fun. They really are. Depends on a couple we've been to were like music festivals. One of them we went to was attached to I think it was a beer festival. I didn't get to that part of it because it was kind of on the other side of the area we were at, but ton of fun. They're a blast. So what you can see here then is some of them were a little bit smaller. This one here and this one here. This one kind of is too. They're a little bit smaller just because that's just the way it worked out in the package. You're always going to have some that are a little bit bigger or smaller than others. When you do a contest, you have to submit a minimum of 6 pieces of meat, individual pieces. So I'd have to submit at least 6 thighs. And looking at those, I've got at least 6. Well, there's 5 of them there that are really good. One of them, I don't know if I could get 6 out of that, but I'd buy 2 packages and pull enough out, and I'll either cook either 8 or 10, depending on how much time I've got, or excuse me, how much room I've got on my cooker. But you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right there that are, pretty consistent. And I'll show you that when I put the skin back on. This one I could probably say I could trim a little bit more off that. I'd get that down to about the size that I need. But it is what it is. So I can't dilly-dally anymore because it's quite warm in here and I'm going to get this. So what I do is I make a brine. This is the brine that I use for competition. I have another poultry brine. I wanted to give you the recipes for this. If you send me a message, it's a really good brine. It's very simple. It's just vegetables, salt, water, salt, chicken stock, vegetables, orange juice, apple juice, lemon juice, and then I put salt, pepper. Well, I already said salt. Salt's the main ingredient. That's why they call it a brine. Let's see. There's thyme, poultry seasoning, sage, oregano. I think that's it. I'd have to look. But anyway, so I stir it up a little bit, and then all I'm going to do is just throw these in just the way they are. Once again, I will say, I don't like to brine with the skin on because when you cook it, if you've brined the skin has a tendency to stay really rubbery. What we're attempting to do by doing it this way and then scraping the fat off the skin is to come up with a crispy skin. Now it's not, it's not cornflake crispy you're looking for, but I wouldn't say, it's by crispy, I mean it's when you bite into it, the skin bite, you bite through the skin clean. You want a clean bite. The judges are only going to get 1 bite, no matter, they're judging it on 1 bite. So they're going to hold it up, they're going to take a bite. If the skin peels off, that's going to drop your points. So you want them to be able to bite through the skin, get a good piece of meat with the skin, make sure everything's flavorful. Excuse me. When we get out to the smoker, there's something else I'll explain about why you got to be careful about the term smoke. Anyway, we'll discuss that later. Anyway, so this I put in the brine. I've just thrown them in here, mix them up a little bit. I'll just put the lid back on. I only brine for about 2 hours. Once again, I think it depends more on a lot on the brine you're using. A lot of people I know will brine like overnight, and if I was to brine overnight in this stuff right here, all you'd taste is the salt and some of the spice. I don't like super salty food. So my personal preference might not be down in some competitions because judges might be looking for more of a savory, salty flavor. The rub and sauce I use is kind of on the sweet side, but we're out west, so there's that. I've heard people say it's kind of an old joke that the further west you go, the sweeter things get, and barbecue is a good example of that. You get down into Southern California and some of those joints down there, and they're super sweet. It's really good. Don't get me wrong. The area we're from is not a hotbed for barbecue at all. I know I live in a small town of I think there's 3,000, 4,000 people, if even that. Another guy here that I compete against, great friend of mine, and other than that, there's just not a lot around here. There's a couple of really good barbecue joints. I'm rambling, so never mind on all that. But anyway, so into the brine it goes, back into the fridge it'll go. I'll go for about 2 hours on that, maybe an hour and a half. It's getting kind of late in the afternoon. I did wash the chicken off before I put it in the brine. I'll wash it off again after we take it out of the brine, because you want to get the the salty layer and stuff off of it. Again, it's just a lot of this comes down to personal preference and what you want to do. This is what I've started doing. I've been real successful with it. It's worked really well. The flavor is really good. You just have to do what you want to do. So I'll go get the pit fired up a little while. We'll pull these out. Oh, I gotta scrape the fat off the skin. So give me a few minutes on that. I'll get that set up and we will jump into that. So we'll be right back. We are back. These are a little too long. They're a little frozen, but it's still going to work just fine. I get a little tied up trying to do some other stuff. All right, so when you pull these apart, make sure that you're working fat side up. A couple of things that I have kind of discovered. This works sometimes and sometimes it doesn't. You get like a wooden skewer. You can roll one of the ends of the skin up in it, and that'll give you something to grip onto when you're scraping. If they get too warm and the fat is just basically gum, sometimes that doesn't work. You just have to work with it. That's why I like them. These are just to the point of almost being frozen. I got to kind of hurry through this. You're going to start to warm up. The knife that I use, the knife that I use is I think it's just a small vegetable knife that comes out of our butcher block. Nothing fancy. It's got a decent edge on it. Nothing too worrisome. There's another little knife that I use that has a real, it's kind of a small serrated edge of some sort, but it's not much different than this. You don't need to get fancy with it. The whole point of this is you're just trying to get this layer of fat off the skin, and you don't need to get it all. Well, you don't need to do anything. I prefer to get as much of it as I can, because once again, I want that bite through skin for the judges. Like I say, you never know. It's so subjective when it comes to judging on this. Now this will work oven, grill, smoker, whatever, however you want to do it. And then we get later on and I'll show you how the smoking process and how we go through all that. It'll kind of make a little more sense, I think. The whole idea is, and I told you I don't like to brine the skin because the fat will pick up the brine. The idea about the brine is it adds moisture, it adds another layer of flavor, and we're gonna put rub on it, some butter and everything. We'll get to that point and we'll put it in the pan. So I'm gonna go through scraping a couple of these, just kind of give you an idea of how that works. And we'll just go from there. So if you get this down, you've got a good thing here. I'm using this plastic cutting board. I don't know if it's gonna work that well, but if you just kind of start in the middle somewhere, damn it, cut that skin. And that'll happen. You'll get holes and stuff in it, and it's not that big of a deal. Try not to slice. You want to keep it kind of at a little bit of an angle, just to kind of get a feel for that. And as the fat starts to come off, you'll see it piling up. And that's okay on that. That's going to cause a little bit of a problem down the road, but I'm just going to get around that hole. So, a good example of what not to do. You don't have to use a whole lot of pressure. Just kind of get to that point to where you're just getting the fat away from the skin. And once it opens up, it'll get a lot easier. You'll see this stuff just starts raking off. This is why it's important to have it, fairly cold. Otherwise, you just get this slime. The fat just builds up into this slime. So I'm going to get as close as I can to that hole I made. And some of the skin will have holes in it when you're doing it, but that's all right. Get a hold of that, wrap that up a little bit better. Get out here on these edges, push everything outward. You don't want to be, starting here and trying to scrape all this way. Just kind of work outward with it, so you've got this, shortest distance between two lines. And once you get to a point that you've got the majority of the fat off, just grab it. Grab it. Ooh, slimy little bugger. Oops. Just turn it around or whatever you need to do. Flatten it back out. Every little stick. Roll it up in it so you got something to grab onto. Make sure you got the whole skin off. Now once again, let me reiterate again. You don't need to match the skin with a piece of meat because we've cut that those pieces down to a particular size. So any piece of skin should fit around them. Even you know, the smaller one, you might have to kind of mix and match a little bit if you've got small thighs, but and that's it. So that was quick and easy. I don't know if you can see that, but you can see how kind of translucent that skin is. I've taken all the fat off of that. Well, not all the fat, but as much as I can off of that. Then you really need to make sure you remember which one is the skin side and which one is the fat side. So you can tell, it's kind of hard to tell. When you lay it out, you'll be able to see the, you know, the scrape marks and all that. So that's one way to do it. We'll do another one. This is kind of a big, hefty piece here. This one here has a lot of just fat on it right there, and we'll end up, you know, trimming a lot of that off. But anyway, so one thing you want to do is make sure that you clean the fat up as you go. You don't want big piles building up, because as that warms up, that gets slimy, and you'll end up dragging some of it back on the piece that you're working on, and just it causes hell sometimes. So we'll stretch that out. Get our piece of wood in there, put a couple of wraps on it. Start kind of in an area where we can see, and that's just, when you see the angle that I'm holding the knife, I'm almost straight up and down. I'm tilting it a little bit forward, and more than anything, that's just so I don't, if I kind of slip or something, I don't go sideways and cut a big gouge in the skin, I think, like I did on that one. Stretch that out. Get down here to where we're moving outward a little bit more. A lot of people hate doing this, and I'm in that same camp. I don't like prepping chicken, but you know, you do what you got to do. You know, you don't need to do this for your backyard and your friends and your family and stuff like that. This is, I'm trying to just, you know, doing this as if I'm doing it for a competition. And the night before a competition, as long as you don't drink a lot, which sometimes happens because they turn into a booze cruise, I'll tell you, you got plenty of time to prep. As a side note, like with my pork and my brisket, I'll actually do all the trimming and everything at home. KCBS rules say that you can do that as long as you don't add any flavoring to them. So basically, you can't rub them, you can't brine them, you can't do anything like that. But you can trim them down before you get to the contest. And I will do that with the chicken also to a point. I found that if you do too much with the chicken before you get to a contest, sometimes it dries out. So I will not brine them before I go to a contest. I do most of the prep there. So you can see, once again, we've got that nice translucent piece on that skin. You can pretty much see the gloves through it. Okay? And that didn't take very long. A lot of people complain about how long it takes, which it does. By the time you get through 8 of these, it's going to be a while. So we will just lay those there. And I kind of hope that gives you an idea of how to do the scraping on that. So I will finish doing these, and then in about an hour, we'll pull them out. We'll pull the chicken out of the brine, we'll wash it, we'll season it, we'll put the skin back on, and we'll throw it on the smoker. Yeah, it'll be about an hour or so. Well, hour from me. So anyway, if you have any questions on this part as far as the prepping of the skin, please let me know. Anyway, we'll be right back. Thank you. Okay, we're back. Our dogs are giving us hell, so we've got the fire and the fur going today instead of the flour and the fur. Anyway, as you can see, so these are pulled out of the brine. They sat in the brine for about an hour and 20 minutes, I think, something like that. Anyway, they've still got some of the spice and stuff on them, and that's fine because it kind of gets under that little slimy stuff that's on the chicken, and that's fine. Like I say, if you want, I will send you one of the brine recipes that I use. It works really well. Brine, of course, adds moisture, adds a layer of flavor. It helps in the cooking. I notice when I do turkeys, and people have said this before, when I do turkeys, when I brine a turkey, they actually cook faster. They seem to cook faster if you brine them, especially if you do them in the oven. on the cooker. Of course, we slow cook them, but anyway. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these aside for right now, and we're going to go ahead and prep them and put the skins on it. So what I've done here is I want to show the two different ways these are done, or the way I've done them. So what I've done here is I have just a mini loaf pan that I do them in. I know there's a lot of guys that you'll see on like the TV shows and all that do muffin pan chicken, where it's actually the round, you know, muffins, where they do them in these pans. That works fine. It's quite a process to prep for them. I'll tell you the difference that I found around here though is I've done it in a pan like this, just kind of loose, and I've actually placed higher than I do in the mini loaf pan. I don't know if that has anything really to do with it. I know the one time I did the mini loaf pans, the only chicken I could really find that was halfway decent was kind of an off-brand, and there was just something about the flavor was off. And that's the ones I was telling you that if you get the ones that have that really dark thing in the bone right there, that turns, see, that's, the brine's kind of darkened that a little bit, but the ones I had before were almost they were really dark brown, and they I don't know, they didn't work out right. But I did them in these pans. I still placed 9th when I did that out of,
I don't remember.
how many teams were there?
I don't remember.
I don't know, over 20, I think there's 20, I want to say 27 teams, maybe 30, doesn't matter. Anyway, but the ones I've done just in a regular pan like this, and I'll show you how we work the difference between these two. But when I did them in this, they looked pretty. They look prettier than these, but I think part of that's the subjectivity that comes from the judges.
Because I don't want it to look manufactured.
Yeah, and I kind of, you know, because I had 6 of them laid out, and they looked really nice, but it didn't look like, you know, somebody had cooked chicken. They were all the exact same size, the exact same length, which was great. And in another contest, maybe down south or in the Midwest or something, that might have worked out really well. In this particular contest, it did not. So I'll show you both ways. All right. So what I've done in these pans is I actually I use the Parquet, the blue bottle. The flavor's okay on it, but the thing I like the most about it is it helps with the moisture. When I do pork butts, this is amazing on pork butts when you went for the moisture. I don't know. Well, I know my son is vegan, and he says this actually is vegan, so I don't know if there's between this and margarine with something that's in it that helps with the meat. But anyway, I have noticed that the moisture is a lot better in the chicken when I use this rather than like tub margarine or real butter in the cubes. So one thing to think about on that. So what I've done is we've only got 8 pieces, so I'm going to put 4 pieces in this pan, and just the open pan. I'm going to put 4 pieces in as you can see, the center pieces here. I haven't done anything on the outside. We're cooking these on a little Traeger 22. That's the cooker I use normally at competitions because I cook chicken at a higher temperature than I do my other meats. I will say something real quick about that. The Traegers have a smoke function on them. I know guys that have cooked chicken just using the smoke, and that scares the hell out of me because if you've got cold chicken and you throw it on that and the temperature is barely 200 degrees, it stays in the danger zone way too long for salmonella and any sort of bacteria like that. And I tried to explain that to him. Don't get so hung up on the word smoke. What you're doing is you're imparting a flavor using some sort of method with the wood. And of course, there's something primal, I'll admit, about cooking with wood. My big, you'll see my Jambo and this other cooker I've got out there. There's something about cooking with fire, you know, kind of that whole Tim Taylor Toolman or thing that goes along with it. And you know, there's a lot to be said about that. Plus, it is an art. It's an art, but there's a big steep learning curve with certain things, and it kind of depends on what you're doing. All right, we're going to run out of time here. So what I'm going to do, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a piece of chicken, and we'll start with this one right here. I don't know if you can see that. So the first thing I want to do is, this is what I do. I daub a little bit of blue bottle on it. Come on. A bit of blue bottle on it, and I spread that on it because I want a good coverage with that. And then my lovely assistant here. So the rub we're using, this rub that we're using is our own rub. We developed this rub, boy, what,
A
several
long
years
time
ago.
ago.
And it works really well. It's just what we call our original rub. We sell rubs under the, a little bit more than that, under the moniker of Phoebe Ann's. Phoebe Ann's one of our dogs.
Phoebe Ann's barbecue.
Phoebe Ann's barbecue, a little bit more. Phoebe Ann's barbecue. If you can see there, we put some rub on there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a piece of the skin. It's over here. And I kind of need a cutting board for this. So I use this this plate and all that just so it keeps the rub from getting all over the place. All right, so once we've got the rub on there, I'm going to drop that on there. I'm going to try to get a good feel for the size. And you see how nice and symmetrical that is. I mean, that's a good piece. Now we're going to grab this chicken, this skin. I'm going to make sure I get the right side here. So that is the fat side. Now what I want to do, now this skin, as you can see, has a few holes in it, which is fine. And what I want to do is I just kind of want to lay the skin on here and just kind of get it in a position where it looks decent. Now I've got this hole over here on this side. This is the hole that opened up on it while I was scraping the fat. So from here, now what I can do, grab my knife and I'm going to pull it this way just a little bit because I want it to wrap under. So I will wrap it under that side. And I've got this kind of a stringy piece right here that I want to get rid of. So from here, what I can do is this is where I'll clean the skin up. I've got this big longity piece here that's not going to do me any good. So take that off. All right. Now from there, I tuck it under on this end. Tuck it under on this end.
Let's just go in the loaf pan or in the other pan.
We'll put this in the loaf pan. So from here, now what I want to do is, I'm going to put it, so you can see. So what I'm going to do is, so we've got a nice even piece of chicken there. You have to really be careful about dropping it in here. So what I've done there then is, I kind of mess that skin up a little bit because it's a little, all right. So, I need a skewer. Actually, what I need is your little dessert.
Yeah, just a really small one.
So with this, I'm going to use this. I can use a skewer if I want, which is fine, you know, either way. But I want to make sure that the skin is tucked down in there. I'll show you why in here in a little while. Just make sure it's tucked down on the sides really good. There we go. Now, what I don't do, what I'll do next is we're gonna add a little pepper. We're gonna put a little pepper on the top, just to help with the flavor. A little bit more. A little bit more. I will.
Is that good?
Yep. Okay, so a little pepper on top, help with the flavor, and then we'll go with some more rub on top. Now, you notice we didn't put pepper between the skin and the chicken. If you can, that's fine. Or if you want to, that's fine. It's not that big of a deal. However, what we discovered is if you put pepper under the skin and then do this, it makes it look like somebody's beating the chicken with a big stick. It turns it this purplish, weird purplish color and isn't very appetizing. The first time I did it, put a little more rub on there. The first time I did it, I didn't think much of it. But after it cooked, it still had kind of a weird purple hue to it, and it was really strange.
Tasted amazing, looked really
Oh yeah,
hearty.
the taste was fantastic, but it looked terrible. I don't know what it was, but it looked like somebody had just kicked the ever-loving you-know-what out of that poor chicken. Not very appetizing. So where you always eat with your eyes first, I quit doing that. So anyway, so that's that one. Okay, so we'll put 4 more in there like that. So the next one, we'll do the same thing. We'll grab a piece. We'll put some, oh, I forgot to put a blue bottle on the top of that. Shoot. Yeah, I missed something. I'm going too fast here. So we'll cover that. Put some rub on it. Okay, put some rub on it. Bring it over to this here. Same thing, I'll grab a piece of skin. This is not a very good one. I actually left these on the little disposable cutting board, knowing that the fat side was up, so that helps too. So once again, try to find a way to just lay the skin over this to where we know it's going to stretch and be good. Okay, and we've got these pieces here that are, you know, quite out of the, it's got a big hole in it, and that actually came off a piece of chicken that way. Okay, we'll take this knife, take a little bit off that end. This stuff is slimy. It's been sitting out too long, but it's fine. Okay. Got this little piece here I want to get rid of. Now what I forgot to do on that first one that I put in that pan over there is, alright, so we've got that wrapped. Just tuck all that stuff in. Once again, we got a nice little plain piece of chicken, but what I forgot to do, put a little dot on that. What I forgot to do is I like to paint the skin with this too, because this will actually help the skin crisp up a little bit, or not crisp up, but it'll make it more bite through. I don't know why, but it just does. So we need to pull that down a little bit, and once again we just kind of tuck everything under. And I'm going a little faster when I do comp chicken. I take a lot more time on this because of course I want them to be, you know, as even as can be. So I'll take this and I'll put it in one corner of the pan. Now keep in mind, if I decide to do this at a competition, I'll fill this pan up all the way, but I'm only going to put 4 pieces in. Okay, so there we have, you can see that piece of chicken in the corner there. And the thing is, in the pan, they will flatten out a little bit more than they will in this pan. They will flatten out a little bit more than they do in that one. So that's just a matter of
personal preference. This is how I prefer to look at it, because it looks to me like it. You know how when you go to the grocery store and you purchase like those, I don't know, like the cordon bleus that are in the freezer, that are in little packages like burrito. That's what this reminds me of.
I forgot to do that on the plate.
Yeah.
We're going way too fast. I forgot to do that on the plate. So we're gonna get rub everywhere, but that's all right.
That's all right. Anyway, that's what it reminds me of. Now, like he was saying earlier, when you go to competition, you kind of have to get a feel for what the judges are after, because some judges think the loaf pan thing is beautiful because you can put them in the box and they're all exactly the same shape and the same size. So again, that is a preference.
Yeah.
Also, I didn't grow up eating chicken skin. I think it's disgusting. So for the fact that he's peeling the skin off and then putting it back on, but you have to have bite through skin for competitions. So there you go.
Okay, so this is really kind of an odd piece. So I've tried to put it on the other way, and it's not quite long enough to go that way. And I'll pull it back this way because we get some more. There, so you see it goes down all the way on the sides. I don't want that much to have to tuck under, so I'll get a little bit of that off. We've got kind of a longity thing here, so I'll cut some of that off. And I'll tuck that. Tuck that. Oops. Oops. Yeah, the skin's getting kind of mucky. All right, shape it where it looks good. We'll gob a blue bottle on there. Paint it.
Is this going in the pan or the loaf?
It's going in this.
Okay.
Okay. And like I say, when I'm doing competition, I clean these up a lot more. I spend a lot more time doing this because, of course, you just what you're up against. So we'll drop that in there next to that one, and we'll kind of push it up kind of close so when it settles. So now we've got that out of the way. All right, so got that there. So the pepper. Okay, so we got that. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and finish up the other 5 pieces here. We'll put 2 more pieces in this pan, in the cake pan. And we'll put 3 more pieces in this pan. And then we'll go out and put them on the cooker. And then we'll go from there. So we will see you in a little while. Okay, we're back just real quick. I just wanted to kind of show you the finished deal here in the pans. You can see this one here, we ended up putting the bigger pieces in because I knew they were going to kind of flatten out anyway. And I didn't want to end up with, you know, these smaller pieces that were going to kind of be mixed in. There's kind of the smaller ones we put in here, and you can see these 2 are bigger than this one. But it'll still show the example that I'm trying to get to on this with the way this is going to work out. So what we're going to do is we're going to run them out. We'll put them on the cooker. I'll show you the cookers, or how I'm putting it on the cooker. They'll cook for anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half at 275. I run my little Traeger a little bit hotter than I do my other pits. So I always cook my chicken on my Traeger because I can kind of gauge when they're going to come off a little bit better. So if it looks like they're not cooking as fast, I can always just crank the heat up a little bit without having to mess with everything else on the big cookers. And then we'll go from there. So I'll get a shirt on because it's starting to get dark and cold out there, and we'll go out and throw them on the cooker, and we'll be right back. See, it's full of smoke. We're going to be cooking these on the Traeger. I have, son of a bitch, that was hot. We're cooking these on the Traeger. We've had this thing for, I don't know, about 5 or 6 years, I guess. Cooked quite a bit of stuff on it. I've got my Jambo Junior, or Jambo Backyard, or Baby J, whatever you want to call it. I don't normally cook chicken on that because I cook the bigger meats on that, and I cook at a lower temperature. I cook between 265 and 280 on that, and it's just wherever it runs. I've got my big mixing cooker here. This is the Mixin 33. More of a commercial type of thing for us. It's a charcoal and wood, whereas the Jambo is a stick burner. So what we're going to do on this, like I say, normally I do cook my chicken on this even at competitions because the chicken only takes about an hour to an hour and a half tops from start to finish when it sits on the cooker. And I don't want to be opening the doors on my big competition rig here and letting all the heat out. So what I'm going to do on this, I'm cooking with pecan. I used to cook with pecan on the Jambo. I've gone back to oak, but I stuck with pecan pellets for the Traeger. Just because I like the flavor. It's mild, it gives a good smoke flavor without being overly smoky, and just seems to cook really well. So what I'm going to do on these is we've got the 4 that are in the pan here. I'm just going to go ahead and put them there like that, kind of keep them in the center. And then the 4 that are in here, and I can tell you right now that on this one's going to spread out a little bit more. I'll tuck them together a little bit. Like I say, if I put 6 pieces in here, I can squish them together to where I can make them pretty much the same size. But I want to be able to get smoke to them, so try to use a smaller pan. We'll go ahead and throw those in. And then I'll keep checking them. And when they get to about right around 135 to 140, usually the skin is set around them. And I'll pull them out of those pans, and I'll actually put them on a rack and finish them off. And then with about 5 or 10 or 15 minutes left, we'll actually bring sauce out, roll them in sauce, and put them back on the racks. And we'll show you that when we get that far. About not quite an hour. I turned the temperature up to 300. Of course, it's only running about 280. I opened the lid. I turned it up to 300 because it's cold out here, and I kind of wanted to get this done before it got dark. So anyway, I checked the temperature on these. They're sitting around 145, 150, and you can see the difference in the way they're cooking on here. So what I'm going to do, I'll pull these off. And I'm just going to throw them on this little tray here to finish them off. And what that'll do is that'll help finish setting the skin. And just kind of dry them. I shouldn't say dry them out. They're going to be plenty moist, but I want to make sure that the skin crisps up a little bit. So I'll do the same thing with these. And these come out a little bit tougher because you got to make sure you don't mess that skin up when you pull them out. And you can see the difference in cooking. See how they relaxed in this pan here? So they're a lot bigger and they just look a little meatier. These here, even though these are smaller ones, you see how they just look square.
And I don't really like cooking in this pan, but it might be one of those things where the judges might like these smaller pieces like this, you know, these pieces that look like this. This one here is kind of a bigger one. If you look and see, at first glance, they look pretty much kind of the same size other than, you know, this one's a little taller. So I'm going to throw these back in for just a minute. They'll probably go back in for about another 10 minutes is all. Just kind of dry things out. And then we'll come back out and we'll roll them in sauce and put them back on for about another 10 or 15 minutes or so, just to let the sauce set, get a nice good glaze on them, and then we'll be done. So we'll be right back. We've had these on. I think I forgot to mention that before we pulled them off and put them on the rack, the temperature was around 145, 150, somewhere maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower. We're looking for 165 total. That's what they say is safe. Also, you overcook them. Sometimes that's when they start to dry out. So I just temped them. I would highly encourage you to get a Thermapen if you don't have one. It's probably the best tool in your arsenal when you're cooking, even in your kitchen. I mean, it's the best thing you'll ever get. So I just temped them. They're right around, all of them are sitting between about 160 to 163-ish or something like that. So we're going to go ahead and sauce them. So all I'm going to do is pull this rack off. And then what I'll do is I'll just take them one at a time. And this is our own sauce that we make. This is our Phoebe Ann sauce. See, that skin didn't sit on that very good. Oh, crap. And I usually like to warm the sauce up just a little bit so you don't cool the chicken down too much. The idea is to be real careful rolling them, just so you get the sauce on them the way they need to be. You see that skin on one side didn't stick very good for some reason. I don't know why. Well, it's probably because I'm pulling it off, yeah. So get the sauce on there good. So you're going to get a nice good glaze on it. Get your nose out of that, you little turd. Let's roll it the other way and see if that helps. Yeah, that helps. Okay. And drop that out of there. Now these smaller ones, they're probably going to be a little overdone because they cook a lot faster than the bigger ones did. So just a nice good glaze on them all. And you don't need to do this. This is, I say, I'm doing this as if I'm doing this in competition. And as competition, this is what we do, just to get a good glaze on them. Because the judges are going to be looking for all kinds of different flavors, so we want them to be as flavorful as possible. And there we go. So I will grab that. So those will only sit on there for about another probably 10 or 15 minutes or so. See how pretty that is? Nice, and that nice color on them with that sauce. Go ahead and shut that. And that's where we're at. So in about another 15 minutes, I'll come out and temp them. If they're around 165, we'll pull them off and we'll be done. We'll just go through a quick look, see at what they look like when they're done. How does that smell, babe? Our dog's eating our sauce. Okay, let's wrap this up. It's been kind of a long day. I'd kind of forgotten how much fun it was to prep and cook chicken, but it's actually fine. Like I said, at competition, we do things a little bit different. You can see on here how pretty the color turned out on those. The plate's a little bit of a mess because I was in a hurry. It's starting to get dark and cold out there, and I wasn't really thrilled about sitting there with the cooker any longer. But anyway, they turned out really good. I pulled them off. The temp one, the smaller ones, was around 168 to 170. The bigger ones were around 165, 4, 5, 7, something like that. So I know they're all done. For a competition, I would have been a little bit better about cleaning the sauce up on them, but they turned out fine. I love the color on them. They smell amazing. We'll go ahead and grab one, try one of the smaller ones, and see. Now what I want to hope for on this is that we get the bite through on the skin and everything, so which we did. Oh,
yeah.
That's hot. Oh, bam. So you can kind of see, let me do it here. I'll do it here. You can see the way that looks, how that turned out. Oh, damn, that's good. And see, I'm not a chicken person, but you can see that's done. If you'll be able to see how moist it is, but I mean, there's good moisture coming out of it. Really good. In fact, it's really good. My wife doesn't like biting into stuff like that, so she's going to cut it.
And probably peel the skin off.
Oh, that'll come with it. There you go.
No,
See, you
that's
got
what
it.
I mean. I don't want the skin.
Oh yeah, she doesn't like the skin. We might have gone a little bit overboard on the spices for what we consider a backyard version of this, but yeah, it turned out really good. I'm really pleased with it. And of course, she can never have
I'm a
enough
sauce person.
Yeah,
I
so
love sauce.
cheese, sauce, avocados, it's all kind of the same thing. This in my hands. Anyway, it turned out really good. I'm really pleased the way it turned out from a backyard perspective on this, and from a competition perspective. The cook was really good on it. The cook turned out really well. The flavor's amazing. Of course, a lot of that's the rub, the pepper, and the sauce. And once again, our own homemade sauce that we have, and our homemade spice that we use on it.
Hey, Bubs.
Can you come up?
They
That's
know
fine.
that they're not supposed to be up on the
Yeah,
counter.
we should
so.
be encouraging them. Anyway, I know this is going to be a long video. I hope that you gain something out of this. These videos are a lot of fun for us. We really do have a lot of fun when we do these things. It's good. Anyway, thank you so much from all of us at Fire, Flower, and Fur. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope you're all happy and healthy. And if you have any questions or comments, please let us know. If you'd like more information on this, even my brine recipe, I'll give you this brine recipe. Just let me know. Anyway, happy smoking to all, and to all a good night. That sounded kind of cheesy. Anyway, goodbye.